Hi, I'm Fran, Global Head of Demand Gen at Cognism. I'm with Liam, our VP of Marketing. And for this episode, we're going to talk about how you measure the success of your ebook. So let's kick things off with whether you're going to run a gated or ungated motion for your ebook. So essentially, if you're going to put a form in front of it or not, how should we be thinking about reporting? Does it differ for both or not?
So it does and it doesn't differ for both. So obviously, if you're gating the ebook, you're going to be collecting contact data, which you might create as a lead or use as an MQL. Whereas if you're ungating, you're not going to be getting any direct leads from the ebook or the asset itself. However, the motion should be very much the same. So what we used to, I think, pitfalls that we used to fall foul of is you create an ebook and you measure it entirely on MQLs, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're measuring it entirely on MQLs, then you don't really care about the content. And if it doesn't create enough leads or MQLs from that, then you might maybe cancel the whole thing and say, oh, we'll start again, we'll do another ebook. But it's not always actually the best measure of it. And it can also lead you down a bad path. It creates tons of leads, but the actual content is rubbish. So when I think about measurement, and when you apply this to both, whether you're gating it or ungating it, think about engagement metrics and then versus your conversion metrics. Mm-hmm. So if you're gated the content, if you're gated or ungated, you'd still think about your engagement metrics being the same. You know, what's the how many views is it getting? So then and if it was if you have it online, then yeah, obviously you'll be looking at page views. But if you had it as a downloadable asset, then your views will count as downloads. You'd also want to see time spent on page, how long have people spent actually reading it? Can you look at scroll depth and see how far people are getting down? Are there any other sort of measurements you can look at? Can you look at heat maps, where people are clicking, which bits people are spending time on, if you're using something like Hotjar for that? Can you also measure dark social comments, are people talking about it? Are people sharing it on social as well? Likes and engagements on any social posts you put out, including the asset. All of these engagement things that are telling you that the content itself is resonating and doing well, because that's the bit that you know that is providing value, is providing demand. And then conversely, you look at then the conversion side. So if this is gated, then maybe it's easy. You're looking at the number of downloads that you then get, the number of form fills, and then maybe the number of meetings booked, meetings attended, SQOs and closed won from those leads, and the quality of that. Now, if your engagement metrics up, you should then see that flow through into the into your conversion metrics as well. High engagement metrics will lead to better conversion metrics, and you can align these things up together. If it's ungated, yeah, you won't be looking at direct MQLs or leads from the ebook, but you should be able to see and track inbound demo requests or contact us demo requests that have been driven from that page, that ungated page. So we look at assisted conversions, did they visit that page before they went on to complete the demo form or the contact us form? We looked at, and then we look at UTMs as well. Was there last touch UTMs from that page, and was it that drove them to the form directly, not just assisted conversion maybe looks at that page and that journey. And then human verified attribution or self-reported attribution, where we look at, we ask people on the form, where did you hear about us? How did you hear about us? People, if they might name the content then that it was the ebook that was the first time they heard about us, or the ebook mm-hmm. that brought them in the first place. And you can then follow that through on your inbound demo requests as well, and see who was driven from there. So I think the key thing again, high engagement metrics will lead to more inbound demo requests that you can attribute back to it. That you'll be able to see that relationship too, and you'll be able to see that growth. And then you might think okay, what's the difference between those two conversion metrics? Well, the inbound demo requests will have intent, so you'll always see a higher conversion rate then on those conversion metrics than you will when you've gated it. And you're passing over leads just from when people are trying to see the asset, because they might still have high engagement, but that intent for filling out that form wasn't to see like your platform or to see the product, which is the difference. Which I think is always really important when then you look at those two different conversion metrics too. Say when you've gated something, you'd be able to see the difference between then inbounds driven by the ebook and MQLs that have been used from downloading the ebook.
Okay, great. And when we talk about, I guess today, like these days, there's so many different ways to measure. So when we're thinking about engagement metrics in particular, there's like website message, like you can look at a web page, we can look at like scroll depth, time on page, like bounce rate, like if we're looking at it through a paid social lens, we might be looking at click-through rate, we might be looking at view rate, like there's loads of things that we can measure. And I think at Cognism we do talk a lot about measuring everything, but realistically, particularly for those like smaller marketing teams, what would your advice be? Do you think it's better to focus on some key leading indicators and keep reporting consistently on those, or do you think you should always be looking at like everything?
Yeah, I think you can take key indicators for the like primary channels you're using, for example. So, and like don't worry about like stretching yourself too thin on like measuring absolutely everything. Say you're promoting it largely through like social and like your and you've got it ungated on a web page, then yeah, you definitely want to follow all of your social metrics and all of your like website metrics as well. But I think really you just want to like measure as much as you possibly can to identify trends. And there'll be some metrics there that like of less like immediate use, but like if you're just identifying positive trends upwards and knowing like and seeing that give like a good sign of whether that content's being engaged with, then you don't have to like intensely analyze all of that stuff. Like you could just you can just have a view of it that can help like give you little indicators exactly to whether the content's performing or not.
Okay, great. And I think the idea around sort of thinking about how you measure stuff should really tie back up into key business goals, right? So as one scenario could be that you see a high engagement on your latest ebook, which then correlates to more leads, if you like going through the funnel. But then I do then think it's important to look at the bottom of the funnel piece and look at actually who it is converting, if they're converting at all, right? So you could have a really engaged audience, but you want to make sure they're the right audience and that is good business for the company, essentially. So I suppose like when you are thinking about what we're measuring, how important do you think that it is that it ties back into those key like OKRs, and if so, like how can you ensure that you do that?
Yeah, I mean everything that you do, you want to have like some sort of impact or driver on revenue. So I think one of the things is on that post conversion side is to analyze who's coming in. So maybe, for example, your content asset influences one persona of like part of your audience, but actually is driving another driving inbounds, but then actually it's driving another persona in, so it's like they're seeing the ebook and then passing on. So you kind of want to be able to analyze all these things, and then you can like maybe make a decision whether you need to make content for that audience too. So I think it's really important not only to like look at the engagement of it, but deep dive the conversion side of it, and you won't be able to always like see directly who it's affecting. You'll just have to come in and you'll have to sort of make those correlations, and if you can see those inbound rises after the content creation, then you know it's having a effect, and then you need to dig into that industry, persona, region, who it's like serving, and then you can then tailor your content going forwards to meet those people.
Okay, amazing. And finally, on this particular topic, a question we get asked all the time is, it's great that we can sort of have this like measurement, and there's lots of different ways to measure, but how are we then reporting back up to senior leadership? Because I think as a marketing team, if we're looking at it weekly, we can discuss lots of different metrics, but often leadership want clear, succinct, like streamlined way of viewing it. So I suppose my question, if you don't mind, is twofold. So one, how do you go about presenting this like streamlined view, I guess, that goes into like feeds back up into business goals? And if you are introducing a new style of reporting. So maybe you started to report on the quality of leads and the volume. How do you kind of persuade senior leadership that that's a good measurement to look at as well?
Yeah, I think the best way is to talk about if you can associate pipeline and revenue associated to those campaigns or generated from it. I think that gets to the crux of it. That's what really that's the driver. That's what moves the needle. And you can demonstrate quite easily then the impact difference, right, between whether you ungated, I can generate this much pipeline from it, or gated, we generate this much pipeline and revenue, and you can really show that differentiator. I think when it comes back, you really want to, I don't think we move away from not showing any engagement metrics and only show conversion ones because senior leadership only care about pipeline and revenue numbers. I wouldn't agree with that. I think you can take headlines from both, right? So you can have headline engagement figures where you can really show how people are interacting with it, number of views, traffic that's driven to the web page, and you can also show dark social and support for the asset if people are talking about it. We like to show qualitative feedback where people are saying this is great and stuff like that, and that can show that engagement side, and then you can back it up with the conversion figures as well, which goes further than just saying we had this many lead downloads. You can can really push through and try and demonstrate where you've got pipeline or revenue from it.
Okay, so almost presenting alternative scenarios, with engagement being X amount, then we're seeing these conversion results, and I suppose it's almost taking those patterns that you're identifying on a higher level and showcasing those at senior leadership alongside the conversion data.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you very much. So that's it for this episode. We will provide a link in the comments on... Sorry to do that again. We will provide a link in the comments of our ebook on producing ebooks that has loads of great tactical tips and templates that you can take away.